I'm James Lynch, and this is my stock report for UFC Vegas 115, taking a look at the biggest winners and losers from the event. We're going to start in the main event for the biggest stock riser. It's got to go to Cano, getting a second-round submission over Duncan in this fight. He was a plus 120 underdog, and just the optics of this as well, going into this fight on a bit of a skid. Lost to Dariush, hadn't fought in a while, actually, that fight against Dariush back in June of last year. Lost to Islam. Remember, he had that nice win streak and then had to fight Islam on short notice. But to go out there and fight a hungry up-and-comer, especially a guy that was at his gym in Duncan, and getting a submission victory in the second round. Very big win for Cano in terms of his stock. If you just look at the lightweight division, there's a lot of fun matchups here. I know Cano not getting any younger here. He is going to be 37 in May, but I do think this is a big win for him and will lead to bigger matchups going forward with the fact that he went out there and finished Duncan. So to me, he's the biggest stock riser just in terms of the optics. He gets a finish. He was an underdog. And again, he was coming in on a bit of a skid here. And had he lost this, he'd be in a really bad spot. So to me, and not to Cano, biggest stock riser on this card. Okay, second biggest stock riser, I'm going to go with Ethan Ewing. I was really impressed with his performance in this fight against FC Vom. Let's go have a look at the actual stats from this one, because it was a pretty dominant performance. And, there was some question I saw from a few people about whether he could replicate that performance he had against Malcolm Wellmaker, of course, making his UFC debut on short notice and upsetting Wellmaker there. But in this fight against FC Vom, look at the difference in strikes here, 114 to 44. This was a total beatdown, and he gets rewarded with the finish in the third round here. Also fought an opponent who missed weight. We'll talk about him a little bit later. Only a minus 135 favorite. My friend Adam Martin had a great tweet last night. He's talking about how, Deiveson Figueiredo is ranked number 7. Would you pick Ethan Ewing against Deiveson Figueiredo? I agree with him. I think he could beat him. This is a guy that, looks like a guy that the UFC has found that could definitely make some noise in the bantamweight division. Again, he was favored in this fight, but I just like how dominant this performance was. And yeah, he's fighting a guy moving up a weight class, but this is the type of thing you like to see. Again, total strikes, 116 to 45. Just a total beatdown here. Ewing here in red. First round, a little bit closer, but second and third round, just total dominant performance here. So Ethan Ewing, definitely going to be one of the highlights when you look back on this card. He is the second biggest stock riser, and you could make a case for first biggest stock riser too, but I'm fine with second just because Cano, a little bit more name value. And third biggest stock riser, again, I know she didn't really light the world on fire in this performance, Janora, that is. But I did like the fact that she came in here as a dog. I think she was a dog. Oh no, maybe, I think she was a dog when we, an underdog when we did the show. But yeah, it looks like she closed as a slight favorite. But here's the thing, you're 37. You can't be losing to up-and-comers like this. And Tabitha Richie, she had the youth advantage. There were a lot of things that Richie had in her favor here. And if you look at this fight, actually, it looks like Richie did outland her here. But I think the optics of it makes sense with the fact that Verna, again, still hanging around in that weight class, a little bit older, but someone that's still hanging out in that contender spot. And I think the story with Richie now is like, can she get over the hump? She doesn't seem to be able to in a fight that, again, was pretty close. Let me look at the scorecards in this one on MMA Decisions, just see what most people were thinking. Again, I watched the card after the fact, so I didn't get to see sort of the live reactions. I just caught up on a few things there, but if you look at it here, I think most people, did score for Janora. Okay, so again, a couple 30-27s. I mean, that stock definitely rises in this case. So Janora, third biggest stock riser. Let's do a couple honorable mentions, and again, some of you may put this on your actual stock risers. Tresean Gore was a big story of this card. His back was against the wall. A lot of people surprised he got this fight. He was a huge underdog, biggest underdog in this card, and he comes through and gets it done. Loved his performance in this one, and again, you look at the stats on this card here. If we look at Gore's performance, where are we looking here? 78 to 70. I mean, outstriking Azamat Bekov, who's a big favorite in this spot, and basically saved his job, right? Because Gore's a guy who's been kind of teetering on whether he was going to get cut or not. Love the fact that he went to the lab a couple fights ago. That seems to be paying off here. But it's also the fact he gets the finish in this one. Guillotine choke in the third round here. So Gore, absolutely an honorable mention. Would have no issue if you wanted to put on an actual stock riser because he basically saved his job. A couple other honorable mentions. I want to talk about Jose Delano getting the win over Robert Ruchala, hope I'm saying that right. But I believe he was an underdog in this spot. Oh no, he was favored. Okay, well, either way, I thought he put on a good performance here. Like what he did. I'll give him a quick mention as well. And then Tommy McMillan, I mean, he was the biggest favorite on this card. I just think, he caught the attention. Obviously, he's quite the personality. Minus 800 favorite, you go out there and get the first round finish. That's pretty much what you need to do. Giacchini, I don't know if he's UFC caliber, and he had a huge layoff coming into this fight. This is kind of like a setup fight, but just McMillan got attention. So by that, I think he does get a bit of a stock rise here, even though, again, he was supposed to win that fight. So those are my stock risers. Let's get to the stock droppers. A couple different ways you could go with this one. My biggest stock dropper has got to be Azamat Bekov, just for the fact that, again, big favorite in the spot, and now he's lost again as a favorite in his last two fights. Belagori, we know how good he is. We saw that last week. But Tresean Gore, I think that was a winnable fight, and he wasn't able to do it. And Gore just, you guys let me know in the comments, Gore just looked like he wanted it more, right? That's what I took away from this fight. And, all that, hype and all that. Again, coming into the big Belgori fight, he was 20-3, young guy, trains at an American Top Team. A lot of people are pretty excited about that, but that's all evaporated now. And now his next fight, he's going to be fighting for his job. I do think they'll give him another fight because he's entertaining. It's not like a fighter that people don't want to watch, but yeah, to me, he's the biggest stock dropper just because there was so much promise 2 fights ago, and back-to-back fights losing to an underdog. Have to put Bekov as the biggest stock dropper, but you could also go with this guy as well, and that is Chris Duncan. And the problem with Duncan, unfortunately, is again, same thing with Tabitha Richie. Couldn't get over the hump. He's 32 now, so he's already kind of in the prime of his career. The Rembecki win was great, but you've lost to Torres now. You lost to Cano. Again, these are ranked opponents in the weight class, but we're starting to notice a theme here. It's especially him getting finished here by submission. Can Chris Duncan get over the hump? Is he ever going to be a contender in this weight class? I think we got our answer last night. It's pretty hard for a 32-year-old to turn things around, go on another crazy run. It's going to be tough for Duncan here. You got, again, main event treatment, was favored in this fight, ends up losing. I think Duncan has to be a stock dropper on this card as a -145 favorite in this spot. Okay, third biggest stock dropper. Again, similar story as Tabitha Richie, and we know the story with her. Again, great fighter, made a lot of improvements, but now she's lost. I mean, look at who she's losing to. Lupi Godinez, whatever, but Jan, former title challenger, Janora, former title challenger. There's a pattern here in that she can't get over the hump. She can beat Uribeses and Hills and all these other fighters. And again, I don't think she outlanded Janora in this fight, but it's just these are fights she needs to win if she wants to be in title contention. And this was a tough loss on this card here for Tabitha Richie. So Tabitha Richie going to be my third biggest stock dropper. And then I'll give one quick honorable mention, and maybe we could add some more in here. I got to go with, what was the other one? FC Vom, who I mentioned in just because the fight wasn't competitive. And not only that, but Esteban missed weight too. So he's on a short leash, 29 years old. Kind of tough for him after that nice win streak. Remember, he beat Charles Johnson and Buenas, but now he's missed weight in three of his 4 fights, and 2 of those were down at flyweight. How do you miss weight at 135? You're the guy who moved up a weight class. So UFC doesn't like that. Fans don't like that when you miss weight, and then to put on the performance he did, tough one there. Again, I think very highly of Ethan Ewing. So, again, it's not like he's fighting an easy opponent, but you got to imagine the UFC is not going to be happy about how everything unfolded for Esteban in this fight. So his stock definitely has to go down. So, just to do a quick recap here of the stock risers, I'm going to go with Cano, Ewing, and Janora as my stock risers. Honorable mention to Trayshawn Gore, Delano, and McMillan. And then our stock droppers are going to be Bekov, Chris Duncan, Tabitha Richie, with an honorable mention to Esteban in this spot. So again, let me know, guys. This is all subjective. There's a million different ways you could define stock and all that. Again, I look into betting odds. I look into context of where they are in the division. I look at the quality of the opponent. I mean, there were a lot of good performances on here. Abdul's win, for example, looked great, but he fought a opponent he was supposed to beat, and 25, there was a lot of promise there, but he was a -1,400 favorite. So kind of expected there. I know Tommy McMillan had the same thing, but I think McMillan, I don't know, just the way he's been acting all week, he seemed to gather a little bit more attention. So that's why I added him in there, but don't have an issue if you wanted to add Abdul in this one as well. So follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, at Lynch on Sports. This is a stock report. I do this after every single UFC event every week, whenever there's a UFC card. Appreciate you watching. My name is James Lynch. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, like you can see there, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks so much for watching.